All right. Doing 3, 2, 1. All right. So, welcome to the first video of 4 a.m. football, where we are celebrating and growing the world's game through an American perspective. We'll be primarily focusing on the Premier League top six, as well as some talk about the U.S. men's national team and the U.S. women's national team. And yeah, we're getting this started because we know that things are a bit different when you start waking up at unreasonable times on the weekends to watch a sport. You're hooked. So
Yes.
4 a.m. is about the earliest that you typically have to wake up for a Premier League game. Though I do know World Cup years are different. I think Qatar is going to have obviously some weird times, but yeah, that's kind of the intro to the channel. So. We'll start with me asking some questions to Bernie. How did you get into football?
Yeah. So of course, my name is Bernie, guys. Huge football fan. Didn't get into it until I was probably high school, going into college, more so because I was primarily a basketball guy. Didn't get into it till about then. And then as soon as that kind of passion grew, FIFA also kind of helped that as well. Playing a little bit more, you got to know the players a lot more, and so. That's kind of the big thing for me was just, playing with friends, watching my friends who play soccer do well in it, and then just kind of continue to grow as well as my family from Mexico or from soccer dominated areas. So it just makes sense to fall in love with it.
Yeah, and you went to a Liverpool game when they visited the U.S., right? Down in California.
Yeah. So huge Liverpool fan, been a fan since I would say Raheem Sterling was on the team. So that's when I was like a huge soccer guy. I just watched a young Raheem Sterling play, and obviously caught a game. And I can't remember. I think that was the first year that I want to say. Can't remember what year it was, but I went down.
Was it after college? After college? During college?
Might have been during college. I know that it was down in the California area.
Yeah, I remember you guys were at the Rose Bowl. I think it's probably 2016 or 2017, but I remember you guys went. It looked like a great time.
Yeah, I mean, when you can catch your favorite Premier League team out in the States, it's a lot of fun. I'm sure one day, hopefully they come over here. I'm sure for your team, hopefully they come a little bit closer this time.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get into it. We'll definitely talk about that because there was a lot of preseason action all around the U.S. with Premier League teams. But so what? Before we move on, what are the national teams or team that you support?
So primarily I'll go with Mexico just because it's a little bit different than my friend group. Usually they're all U.S., so I like to be a little bit different from the bunch. I'll go America number 2 and then England number 3. It's my European team just because that's where my dad's from. Mom's from Mexico, so just all over the place. And then obviously with the U.S. growing the way it has been, just seeing the young guys, the new mantle come in is really cool to see. And so I'm hoping this World Cup, especially in Qatar this year, will be a lot of fun to watch them and see how they perform in this World Cup. Because I think for me personally, I don't think the Mexico is going to do very well. Just as a segue into something else later down the line, but I think the U.S. it's an exciting time, so I'm excited to see what they do in the future.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Mexico, I think they've performed just as good, if not better, than the U.S. in most World Cups, and obviously made the last World Cup, and the U.S. didn't even make it. So I think Mexico's always got a pretty good chance. They always got some great talent. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess I can do my own intro. I didn't even introduce myself.
Mm-hmm.
My name is PM. I'm the creator of the channel alongside Bernie, and I got into football kind of similarly to Bernie as well. So I played all the way until I was about 13, decided to play baseball instead because I didn't enjoy running. And then I started getting back into the idea of football back in high school. A lot of people were playing FIFA, and they kept bringing the game over to my house and kept just repeatedly beating me 7-8-0 and just laughing in my face. And so I was competitive. So I figured out, 20, I don't know, FIFA 2015, I think. Bought my first FIFA and started playing and getting better because I got tired of everyone beating me. And yeah, started really liking it. And then yeah, what team I'm a fan of? Obviously Arsenal. I don't know quite when I decided in terms of like the exact moment, but had used them on FIFA, had heard a little bit about the story, obviously the Invincibles,
Mhm.
kind of how they had fallen down a little bit, but they played really aesthetically pleasing, which I really enjoyed. So I had a few friends that were fans of them, and so I think it just made sense. And then yeah, I think I started seriously watching in 2015 sounds about right.
Mhm.
And so national teams I support. Um, the U.S. obviously exciting time as Bernie kind of talked about. And then I descend from the Philippines. Unfortunately, I don't think we've ever made a World Cup, and I don't know if we've made any regional competitions. I know we've been trying lately, but it's definitely growing. I don't know if it's growing as quickly as it might be here in the U.S., but I do know that there are some Filipinos that have played across Europe. There was a guy that was a goalkeeper, I think in the championship. Can't remember. I'd have to look into it, but yeah, I mean, the U.S. is definitely the exciting part of my national team. So
Mhm.
um, yeah. So I think as far as topics we want to go over, generally we're going to talk about last season's tables, transfers in and out, kind of the preseason talking points, and then a little bit of the U.S. men's national team and women's national team as we wrap up. So yeah, maybe start off with the last season table if you want to pull it up, and I'll pull it up over here. And
Yep.
yeah, we can kind of talk about just generally, you know, is this what we thought it would end up like? I mean, to me, probably. I think City and Liverpool were always the two that were, destined to kind of run away with things, and everyone else was kind of just fighting for third and fourth. So
Yeah.
I think it made sense there. I mean, 1 point is pretty crazy over the whole season, losing the title by 1 point for Liverpool.
Mhm.
But it was exciting. I mean, it was a great season. I think in terms of drama from the start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaway from this past season, for me personally, was the fact that when I created, on my other YouTube channel that I do, the Charge, try
Oh
to
yeah,
get into
subscribe.
get into soccer. Subscribe to both. As my failed attempt to do a Premier League preview predictions with, I think with all of you guys and including our friend Sean and all that stuff. I was really excited about Chelsea because I thought they brought in Romelu Lukaku. They got all these guys to help them. I thought, okay, this is going to be the perfect time for Chelsea to maybe get back to where they once were in the early in
Hmm.
the 2010s and try to get back to just winning. Obviously, winning the Champions League. I thought that was going to be that boost for them, and ultimately, it just ended up faltering for them. And even though they got third place, I think what's disappointing the most part is that they weren't competitive with the other two for the amount of money that they
Hmm.
spend. And I just feel like there's a lot of excuses going out there. And again, I might come off as a Chelsea hater, but there's a lot of excuses going out there for me personally where Chelsea is not being held accountable to the really lackluster season. If we even look at the goal difference between the top two teams, Manchester City with 73, Liverpool with 68, and then all the way in third is 43 with Chelsea. I mean, especially when you sign Timo Werner the year before, you bring in Big Rom to come in to help out. Uh, I
Kai
think,
Havertz,
yeah,
Callum Hudson-Odoi. Yeah, you're definitely there on the right
Ziyech,
track.
and just like again, a lot of to me that to me is the disappointing part. And then in terms of just the Liverpool Man City thing, I mean, we knew that this is how it was going to end. It's just the story to get to that end was the more intriguing part. And for Liverpool's credit, they got to the end. They tried to make it exciting, but at the end of the day, just couldn't get across the finish line for whatever reason for both the Champions League and uh, the uh, the Premier League as well. So that's kind of my spiel from it, and I think just
Yeah,
Tottenham Arsenal. I didn't expect Tottenham to kind of come back from the dead. Um,
yeah,
I thought Arsenal was doom and gloom at the beginning. I was with some of the fans that were just kind of calling for Arteta out. But But it is cool to see that they're now like they got rid of some of the older guys that weren't really responding to Arteta, and then now are the younger guys, are buying in, like the guys that they need to, the top guys what's
Mhm.
key. What's key for Arsenal going into even this next coming season, which we'll talk about a little bit later.
For sure. I mean, let's revisit the point with kind of the top three at first. I think you're 100% right. I think everyone was thinking City, Liverpool, Chelsea were all going to duke it out for the title. Chelsea obviously having the Abramovich Russia kind of fallout with obviously the Ukraine war and how that kind of hung over things. It's obviously hard to kind of figure out how much that played a factor in things. But you look at their squad on paper. I mean, you think if you give a team like that Thomas Tuchel, you think that they would be able to fight kind of with City and Liverpool just on paper. But yeah, I think in terms of Chelsea, top four was probably the bare minimum they needed, and they got it. They did get it somewhat comfortably, but yeah, they weren't quite at the standard I think that most people were probably expecting preseason. Coming off a Champions League final, um, Champions League trophy, excuse me. And then yeah, I mean, as far as top four, the race between Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, Man U, and I mean West Ham was leading it for a good portion of the start as well. Yeah, I mean, it was night and day difference once Conte came in. I think for Tottenham, I think every fan of a top six team was not, hoping that Conte would ultimately pick Spurs, and I think he took some convincing because I think that they weren't quite. He wasn't quite sold on the project initially, and then Levy went back and gave him a bit more money or whatever it is, and figured it out. And with Harry Kane and Son, and then their January signings with Kulusevski and Bentancur. I mean, that was really all they needed to kind of get there. I mean, their attack is just incredibly deadly. Conte is obviously a great coach. I don't know what the longevity is like with his kind of 10 years at places, but he's undoubtedly a great coach. Won the Prem, won Serie A. So once he went to Tottenham, I think that was definitely concerning to Arsenal fans. As far as Arsenal, I think winning a spot in Europe was probably the bare minimum we needed. I think the last 2 or 3 seasons under Arteta, we were 8th or 9th, as low as we've been in a long time. So, I mean, I think top 4 would have been overachieving a little bit. I mean, it was definitely there for the taking. Obviously, lost 3 pretty big games to mid-table clubs before then winning like 2-3 massive games in a row to kind of let things hang in the balance between the North London derby, and then we'll not talk about the North London derby and how that went. There's some questionable refereeing, but that happens in the Prem. So as far as Arsenal, I think 5th is about right. I don't know if they were that much better than anyone in the top 4. And then Man U, obviously biggest disappointment. They weren't even close in this race. I mean, Tottenham and Arsenal were 2 points separated, and then Chelsea was only 3 points above Tottenham. Man U, the gap between 4th and 5th, or 5th and 6th, 69 to 58 points, 11 points. That's a huge gap. I mean, as far as Europa, they were questionably even making it into Europa because West Ham was on 56 points. So definitely a disappointing season for them. Ronaldo did not bring back the good vibes, and we can definitely talk about what'll happen in the future with this. But I mean, yeah, I think overall was a great season, and I think we got another great season on tap. I mean, City and Liverpool, it's an arms race between them. Obviously, we can talk about their transfers. Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, and Man U, I think are kind of in that second tier, and I think it's clearly that there is top 2, and then everyone else. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, did you have anything on the last season before we get into kind of transfers?
Well, the one thing I was going to ask you about Arsenal, and just to go back to the Arsenal point, is
Sure.
do you feel like the objectives change depending on what's going on during the season? So at this point,
Mm,
if you think about it, like Arsenal was at this had an opportunity to go top four. They had games in hand.
yep.
Like, does that change anything for you, especially with no FA Cup, no Carabao Cup, with no European football to play? Did that change
Yeah.
anything for you? Because obviously we have a lot of optimistic friends, and I'm not trying to call them out and say like, "Hey, you should be optimistic," but at the same time, you also have to be realistic when there's change in plans. Because I felt like to me, I think Arsenal definitely could have made the top four spot easily. And again, it
Yeah.
might just be due to the youth and kind of their situations. But I'm going to come to one player when we talk about them because I'm coming for his head. Just like I come for Ben Simmons in NBA. It's one player for me that just continues to like. I think he continues to be a thorn in Arsenal's side in terms of I think for them to progress forward to where
For
I
sure.
think you guys want to be at. So why don't you just answer the first question? I kind of go on tangents sometimes, but
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what do you think of just like the change in objective? Do you feel like that's a fair, valid criticism?
All right. So I'll start it off by saying I think this season was definitely a test in terms of Arteta as
Mm-hmm.
a manager. This was the critical season. I think he's been in charge for 2 seasons. This last one was the third. So the last 2 seasons, we were obviously like eighth or ninth, whatever, missed out
Yeah.
on, everything. And I think that had definitely soured people's, opinion of Arteta. I came into this season knowing that depending on how things went, it could, go great if
Mm-hmm.
we were kind of in the Europe fighting for Europe. If it was, same old falling out of top four contention going into eighth or ninth, I think Arteta probably gets fired.
Yeah.
And I mean, just looking over season results, we started off 3 straight losses:
Yeah.
Brentford, Chelsea, City. I mean, Chelsea and City, you knew we were probably losing. Brentford was a bit of a shock, but we also had COVID going on.
Yeah.
We had like 8 or 9 players missing. So I know there were a lot of jokes made about Arsenal in those first 3 games. Everything was doom and gloom. And so over the course of the season, I mean, I think you saw progress, which, that's what we needed. I
Mm-hmm.
think in terms of timeline, this Arsenal rebuild has kind of reminded me of how Liverpool kind of rebuilt with Klopp. I think Klopp first or second season, you guys missed out on everything. Or first season maybe missed out on everything. Next season, I think you guys got into Europa, went into the finals versus Sevilla,
Yeah.
uh, and then obviously lost. I think in like PKs or it was tight,
Yeah.
whatever it was. And then I think after that started contending
Mm-hmm.
for titles. So I think that third season is pretty critical when you want to see progress.
Yeah.
And I think we saw that for sure. I mean, yeah, we had some terrible, terrible gut wrenching streaks of performance, but um, we were in top four position for most of the year. I mean, if you want to look at the nails in the coffin, it's definitely 3 game losing streak.
Yeah.
When we had a game in hand, we lost to Crystal Palace 3-0,
Mm-hmm.
lost to Brighton 2-1, lost to Southampton 1-0, and then
Mm-hmm.
somehow we beat Chelsea,
Yeah.
Man U, West Ham, and Leeds right after we lost those 3. So going to the North London derby, we could have clinched with a win. Game didn't go our way. Some calls didn't go our way. Whatever. Still had a chance to kind of secure top four, and we lost to
Mm-hmm.
Newcastle 2-0, who is probably one of the scarier teams going into this season. So,
Yeah.
it ultimately, I think, was a hot and cold season. But, you look back on this season as an Arsenal fan and you're like, there was progress. This
Yeah.
is something to believe in. We've gotten rid, like as you said, some of the deadwood, some of the older players, maybe people that didn't buy in. I mean, we fielded one of the youngest teams, I think, if not the youngest team in the Premier League. So, I mean, yeah, it was tough season, tough not making Champions League. We were really close. It definitely hurt. sad, whatever. But being back in Europe is definitely great. And I mean, I think getting into transfers a little bit, I think Arsenal have definitely had one of the more exciting transfer windows, and potentially might have a little more ammunition left before we go. So yeah, I mean,
Do you want to segue into that?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, let's go straight into it. So I think we'll just go top six order. So
You want to go?
no. Let's start with City and work our way down. And we can definitely let me know when you have it up. I have it up on my screen, and I can or if you want to start somewhere. I mean, I think the obvious candidate to start things out is with Holland. I mean, he's probably
Holland. Yeah.
He's the marquee signing, I think, of probably everyone that is going to be signed this summer. I think his release clause played a pretty big factor in terms of like value. So we won't get into value because he had a release clause and he got to basically pick where he wanted. His dad played for City. Was hoping Odegaard could have worked his Norwegian magic on him a little bit. But I think with no Champions League, there's no hope of him coming to Arsenal. So, the City connection to his dad, and just made sense. But I mean,
even though his dad's more of a Leeds guy, but that's okay. They won't mention that in the history books, but that's okay.
I mean, what do you think of Holland going to City and just in general?
I mean, I'm a pretty big fan of him. I'm a fan of the Borussia Dortmund system and the way that they kind of get these young guys to. They find a way. After watching, I can't remember which documentary it was. It might have been the same thing as Arsenal's in right now, the All or Nothing. But there was one, I believe, on Amazon, or I can't remember which streaming service. But there was one on Borussia Dortmund. They kind of went through the training. I think Marco Reus was in there, and you can clearly see that they have something in place. And so, and the fact that he's scoring a lot of goals out there in the Bundesliga, like he's going to be a really good player in the Premier League. I'm excited to have finally like what it feels like you get the big number 9 back in England, whereas before they would go to the Galacticos, they would go everywhere else but England. But now that the Premier League has really surmounted and surpassed a lot of these other teams around the world, just the league itself, it's just like this is where you get those guys to come back to now. Like you get guys like Erkalan, instead of going to Real Madrid to try to, become a Galactico and try to be like the number 1 guy for their team, he goes to Man City again, where his dad played. And so I'm excited for him. I do think that he's going to at least score 20 goals. The question is how many, I don't know how many much more than that in terms of like, because obviously Liverpool fan don't want to be too unbiased. But I am excited. The other signing I'm excited for too is the Calvin Phillips signing. I like him as a CDM. I wish Phillips was more had that gall in him to like be like, okay, I want to be the guy on a team, and so he would go to like a different team. But at the end of the day, the rich get richer. They got richer and they sold too. So I can't be upset about them being like an oil money club when they actually did a pretty good job this offseason, like actually selling guys. Selling Raheem, Jesus, Zinchenko, Pedro, and then obviously sending Zach off on a loan to Middlesbrough, so that'd be good for him for the U.S. Obviously, another segue, a little hint,
get some playing time,
some hint of a segue later on down the line. But I think this team, obviously, running it back with kind of a similar lineup. I expect nothing less from Man City coming into next season.
I mean, I think you're dead on. I mean, Holland is, I think, one of the most prolific strikers at his age, like ever. I mean, he's 21, and I think he's scored close to a goal a game. Like he has over 100 games played, and I think over 100 goals. So, it's honestly, I mean, it's not even a question of it. Is it a successful signing? It's more like, what is the ceiling of his potential kind of at City? Because City create so many chances, same as Liverpool. Having a deadly striker like Holland, who is fast, strong, technically, as good as they come. I mean, I really think the only issue with Holland potentially at City is just figuring out how he kind of fits in the whole scheme of things. Like, we obviously know he's a great finisher. We know he's, very fast. But are we going to see the kind of intricate play that we expect out of Pep's teams with Holland? And I think he's obviously capable of it. The dude is unlimited potential, but I think we'll definitely see kind of how he fits in, and if it's
Yeah.
maybe takes a little bit more of an adjustment. We'll see. I mean, as far as bigger strikers, that hasn't really been the mold. Rom came to Chelsea and he's off
Yeah.
to Inter. One year later. Giroud is obviously off of the Premier League. I think if you're a bigger striker in the Prem, you typically kind of have to have some of those intricate little
Yeah.
layoffs, center forward type qualities, and I think that'll be interesting to see if Holland can kind of play off. And then Calvin Phillips, like you said, I mean, he's class. Like, played for Leeds, played for the England national team, and he was undoubtedly like one of the better players in the English team. He's kind of the clean it up, do it all center defensive mid. I think he's honestly a bit underrated technically. I think I remember a few like volleys or shots. He scored a couple goals, I think, for England. So I really like him, but like you said, it's honestly crazy that City get to sign somebody like Phillips to be like, a rotational player. But that's just kind of the quality of things. And then it doesn't count as an arrival technically, but in transfer market it shows. But Julian Alvarez from River Plate, that guy looks incredible as a prospect. Don't want to make too much comparisons between him and Aguero just because they're Argentinian strikers, but seeing some highlights from Alvarez, that guy looks clinical. He looks like a City signing that, they buy him young, loan him out, get him ready for the first team. And as soon as they hit the first team, 10 to 15 goal player, maybe more. So they always have reinforcements kind of coming in. And then, let's talk about departures. I mean, it's certainly interesting to see top 6 teams in the Prem buy and sell from each other. That's not something we, typically would have seen maybe over the last 5 years, but now it's becoming more common.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just as a talking point, maybe we could talk about this as a later topic. The only reason why is because I think it's too expensive for the other leagues to buy these players.
Yeah.
And so, we can talk about, the Premier League, are they good for football? Are they bad for football? Maybe at another point. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's crazy to see that, you sign these high caliber players, like they're going to each other's clubs. They're not just going to, they're not going to Bayern Munich or Real Barca, or Barca. Well, Barca has no money. I don't know how they're getting players. But
Liverpool robbed them of all their money.
Yeah, but
so let's talk about just a few of the outgoings real quick. So first off, what do you think about Raheem Sterling as a Liverpool fan? Seeing him go and grow as huge player at Liverpool, sold for one of your highest fees over to City, have an incredibly productive career at City, and now move on his way to Chelsea. I mean, dude's played for 3 of the top 6, and that's he's 27. That's crazy for somebody that's already on their 3rd top 6 team.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting for him is the fact, like you said, he's played on 3 top 6 teams. Obviously Liverpool, Man City, kind of grew as a Man City player. I think what's a little like, I think for Raheem Sterling, I don't know if he cares about being a legend too much. I think he really enjoys the trophies, enjoys the money. And there's it takes a special certain person to really care about the legacy. And again, I think Raheem Sterling has a good legacy in the Premier League, but I think if he would have been able to stay at one club, I think it would have been legendary. The only thing that kind of hurts him at times is just the continuous talk about his unclinical finishes, right? Talk about how he can't really finish in front of net, and that's probably as a factor as to why he went. And so I think as a Liverpool supporter, it sucks to see that Raheem Sterling, you sell him on to Man City because that's what he wanted to do, get the trophies, get the money, to just kind of end up going to Chelsea is the reverse Daniel Sturridge. The reverse Daniel Sturridge.
A little bit of a sour taste, I think, seeing him go to Chelsea. I mean, he's undoubtedly clinical. He's great. Goal contributions, absolutely top tier. I had him in fantasy last year. He's prolific. And he's 27, so he's 4-5 years of
Mm-hmm.
top level production out of him, that's not unreasonable. And $62 million for him, I think that's pretty fair. We're using fees in terms of dollars. You know, the euros are
Yeah.
equivalent to dollars, so you know it's not too different for any Europeans watching this. As far as as far as other outgoings, I mean, I think we got to lump these two together. Both same age, Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko. I mean, obviously both going to Arsenal, so I have, you know, my opinions. They've obviously looked really good in this
Yeah.
preseason. But as far as I think, you know, a neutral third party, what do you think of Jesus and Zinchenko going to Arsenal? Like, there's obviously jokes. Arsenal's a City's B team, but you know, do you think it's that simple, or do you think it's like City have a lot of talented players, and you know they can't obviously all be starters?
I think that's pretty much it. You know, you can go Arsenal City FC type of deal. I mean, like when it comes to Arsenal signing these two guys and you know kind of letting them go at Man City, more so from the Man City perspective, and we'll talk about the Arsenal side when we get to Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
I think these are kind of some huge blows. I think the Zinchenko one to me is probably the biggest blow out of both of them. Just for the mere fact that I think Zinchenko, he's such a versatile player, can play the midfield, can play outside back. And obviously, you know, I think he wants to play in the midfield. I don't think he's a guy that wants to play as an outside back from
Mm-hmm.
all the memes and everything that I've been seeing in that from that perspective. And so
That's the best research you can do right there.
that's the best
The
research you can
memes.
do is memes because they kind of reflect reality. But you know, I think that they are going to miss him. I think that he again is looking for that playing time that obviously Pep can't guarantee. You know, this team is so loaded. They just signed Calvin Phillips. You know, they're basically taking the Zinchenko role that he wants. And so, you know, for Zinchenko going to Arsenal, I think it's a good thing for him. And so, you know, we'll see what happens to both of these guys, and we'll talk about them, like I said, more in the Arsenal section of this video.
Yeah.
But I am excited for these two guys in terms of their future. And, you know, like you said, I think it's a lot of talent on this team. You know, now with the new loan system in place where you can't loan out as many players as you once were able to, I think it'll create more parity in terms of these young guys, such as, you know, even Alvarez, even, you know, if, you know, maybe he ends up going to a different squad. You know, yeah, they have so many players on their roster already that to me look like they could be, you know, in the previous system be loanees out, but now they might be having to force to sell them.
Yeah, yeah. So we can definitely talk about that. Last departure I think I want to mention is just Fernandinho. He's 37, which honestly I didn't even know. That's crazy, but obviously a stalwart for City. I don't think anyone outside of City fans is happy. You know, we'll be sad to see him go. You know, he's a great player. I think he had, you know, him and Fabinho to me both really, I think, kind of operated in similar roles, kind of the defensive mid, also, you know, a little in a pinch at center back, but also just technically so great in terms of striking the ball. You know, definitely seen some bangers from both Fabinho and Fernandinho, and you know, losing a senior squad player like that's going to happen. He's 37. He wanted to go back home to Brazil, but I mean, it's gonna impact City at least a little bit.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, let's go into Liverpool. And let me ask you the questions here. So obviously the biggest incoming is Darwin Núñez, and you know, give me a little bit of info on Núñez, what you kind of expect, and how excited are you? You know, this is kind of Liverpool's answer to Haaland in terms of an arms race signing prolific strikers. So give me some Liverpool give me some Liverpool scouting report.
I mean, the guy's obviously a tall striker again, just like Eric Haaland. Like you said, they're trying to basically go tit for tat with Man City with this signing. What I'm excited about is his movement. Not, you know, he's not like a stiff forward. He's not going to be a guy that's just like lumbering or doing something too necessarily crazy. And so for me, I'm excited to watch him play and watch him grow. Obviously, you know, I think a lot of the situations that we've watched so far in the preseason, you know, have been emphasized on his misses and, you know, kind of those chances that people are like, oh, you know, making videos of it, Jose Mourinho memes and other things like that.
Yeah.
But what I think it is going to happen for him is that I think it is going to take a while for him to get acclimated to the Premier League. I don't think he's going to be Eric Haaland, where like he's scoring, 25 plus goals. I think you're going to get most likely you're going to get 18 to 20 from him, in my opinion, because I think he just will take time to adapt into the league. I think with Roberto Firmino, with 1 year left on his deal, I think they're going to try to play him. And have him kind of be the starter. Obviously, Mohamed Salah signing that contract extension. So I think that saves a lot of, kind of jokes for the Liverpool fans' perspective. But I'm excited for Darwin. I think that he'll be a good player. I think it'll take him a little bit of time, and I think he'll start to catch on by the end of the season. And then you're going to see why the fee for him was so high. And I think, as many clubs, I've tried to talk about the fee and things like that. I think Arsenal on my mind right now. But Liverpool, I think they can do a good job with the way that they've kind of sold some players. I think that there's going to be a couple more that they're going to sell. But I think at the end of the day, Darwin, like you said, is the answer to the Haaland signing, and I'm excited to see where he goes for the future.
Yeah. I mean, he scored a few against Liverpool, right? Or at least one. I remember at least one goal, class goal that he scored versus Liverpool in the Champions League. Yeah, I mean, based on what I've seen just in Champions League, seems like a tall, fast, great finisher. And with Sadio Mane leaving, I mean, there's obviously a need for more attacking talent in Liverpool. Add that to Jota, Salah, Firmino, who's probably, in the twilight of his career at Liverpool. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Liverpool and Luis Diaz, forgot about him. I feel like Liverpool constantly, each window, just, as one person is kind of pushed toward leaving or, maybe on the end of their Liverpool career, they always have a young, expensive sign to kind of fill in the void, and they just integrate them. Maybe they integrated them a little bit slower, but it undoubtedly has dividends. I mean, I remember when they bought Jota, I was like, that's a really interesting deal for about 40 million, I think 40, 50 million. And then dude is just, scored so many goals for them. And then also Luis Diaz in January, like, I think if somebody was buying him this window, he'd probably go for a similar fee to Nunez, like 70, 80. I think you guys got him for around 50 to 60. Like, I mean, Nunez and Luis Diaz were two of the top players in Portugal.
Yeah.
So it is, pretty crazy to see two of the top players from that league end up on Portugal or on Liverpool and see kind of how they go. The other, I think, that we got to mention with Liverpool outside of Nunez is Fabio Carvalho, because he was rumored, I think, at the end of last summer, and then the paperwork didn't make it. The fax machine was off.
Yeah.
Didn't get the deadline there. But I mean, I see he's only 19, and I remember reading a lot of good things about him as well. Do you think he'll play for Liverpool this season, or is he going to be loaned off?
He's going to be playing. I think watching him play and helping Nunez score 4 goals in that game in the preseason friendly. You can clearly see that he adds a different dynamic to what we've been missing, obviously, since Coutinho left. When Coutinho was there, obviously Klopp made the infamous statement that you could go to Barcelona and get the money, but you could stay at Liverpool and be a legend. We obviously know what route Coutinho took in that instant, but I think Carvalho has the same potential as a Coutinho to like really make a huge impact in the midfield. Getting goals and scoring from areas where normally we don't really score from, and so I think when it comes to Carvalho, I think he's probably the more exciting one because I think he has the most potential to start consistently over a Darwin Nunez. Just because I think with Darwin, I think Klopp will try to ease him into it, and I think that actually takes a lot of pressure off Carvalho, even kind of being like the signing that kind of fell through, but then ultimately kind of came in this offseason. And so I think Carvalho will do amazing things for Liverpool. I think he'll kind of fill that Coutinho role that we've been missing. And I think it just adds a new dynamic too, because I think we're going to probably do a different a different formation this year with Trent. I've been noticing that they've been playing Trent a little bit more in the midfield when he kind of is up in the attack. He'll shift over a little bit more into the middle. And so I think it was like a 4-2-3-1 instead of like their classic 4-3-3. And so I'm excited to see them play a different style too than just the typical 4-3-3, because I think what happened at times last season, you could see in that Tottenham game, obviously you saw it in the Real Madrid game, is that when they did play, it was not a style, it was a style that, if teams are playing very defensive, they're able to kind of hold that wall, if you will. And so I think, kind of hoping for a little bit better of an off season, actually going into this next season for Liverpool in that sense by, having different players come in, getting different formations. And then, of course, Liverpool also signing Calvin Ramsey, another kind of right back replacement. I like that one. And so, again, I'm excited for Liverpool's season. Again, it'll be a tit for tat race with Man City. And I'm excited to kind of go at them again and see if we can do it this time.
Yeah. Well, that sounds exciting. I mean, that a player like Carvalho for 6.5 million. I mean, if he's going to make a contribution this season, that is an incredibly low amount to get a big time contributor. And I saw his goal involvements in the championship where Fulham were last year. Looked, pretty solid, like half a goal contribution per game, which someone at 18 at attacking mid, that seems pretty promising. So let's talk quickly about Liverpool outgoings. Obviously, the big one, Sadio Mane, Bayern for 35 mil. Nico Williams to Nottingham Forest for 22. That's crazy. Takumi Minamino, Monaco, 16.5 mil. And then obviously the loss of two legends on free transfers, Divock Origi and Loris Karius. So
legends in different ways.
I mean, yeah, this definitely seems like a bit of the change of, some generation at Liverpool. Mane's gone. Origi's gone. Obviously, Karius is a holdover from one of their early Champions League kind of adventures. But, I mean, Nico Williams and Minamino were also more recent additions. So it seems like Liverpool's kind of trying to revamp the depth a little bit there. And then, obviously, with Nunez and Mane kind of trying to get some first-team players in and out.
Yeah.
Are you sad? Are you sad? Which one are you more sad about, Origi or Mane?
I'd probably say, I'm a little bit sad about Mane because I think that, but I think Mane's a guy that just wants to do new things. I don't think he's a guy that likes to necessarily stay at one place all the time. He went from Salzburg to Southampton and then to Liverpool and then obviously now to Bayern. So I think he's an adventurer. I'm trying to think of the right word, but he's an adventurous guy. So he doesn't want to stay at one place and become a legend. He wants to just kind of do his thing.
I think Mane could definitely see himself as kind of like, a little bit of the chosen one. He led Senegal to the first AFCON championship I think they ever had. Led them to qualifying for the World Cup over Salah with those crazy lasers in the eye penalties. Like, I definitely feel like Mane is like kind of about himself. I mean, he's undoubtedly great. Like, so many great goals for Liverpool. But I could totally see him as being, one of those guys that's like, you know what, I'm ready to try something new. So, if you're going to pick one between Salah and Mane, then, I think you probably have to go Salah.
Yeah, obviously go Salah, goals, the way that he just kind of contributes to the game. Obviously you have to pick him. And then in terms of like some other side, like obviously Divock Origi, that's a really sad signing just from the fact that, this is the guy that led that magical night at Anfield against Barcelona. And so I'm sad to see that he's gone from that team, because I think, like you said, he's a legend in his own right at Liverpool for the stuff that he's done. Obviously scoring in the Champions League as well against Tottenham. And then obviously the one signing that I kind of am a little disappointed in is just the Takumi Minamino. I think he actually is a pretty good player. I think he probably doesn't get the respect he deserves because he doesn't start. As obviously he's one of those Klopp signings where he plays against Klopp, he signs him. The infamous kind of just if Klopp sees you, he takes you. And so
hey, Darwin Nunez is one of those.
Exactly. And so I'm sad to see that he couldn't necessarily like go in there and try to figure some things out for himself and try to make a rotation, because even when he was at Southampton, he actually played pretty well. And so I'm sad to see him go, but he'll probably do a good job at Monaco. And then Neco Williams, you have to let him go. He wants probably first team football. If he wants to go Nottingham Forest, you just let it happen.
22 million is honestly a great fee for a right back that's not starting either. But how about Origi before we move on from Liverpool? How about the feelings around him? He's a legend.
Yeah. I think your thing probably cut out, but I'll just kind of repeat again what I said. I think what's disappointing for Origi is that he's a legend at the club. Obviously making that great night in Barcelona, at Anfield versus Barcelona. Obviously the Champions League against Tottenham. He'll be a Liverpool legend. I think he'll probably at some point, whether he has a statue or some sort of mural, will be made for him. Just the fact that he has been such a big contributor to Liverpool and their success the last couple of years, from not only just the Premier League but also a Champions League as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone can think of Liverpool and their success without thinking about that goal from Origi and Trent. That I mean, honestly, I think that probably is a microcosm of Liverpool as a club. Is like never say die. I mean, they always have a chance in any game. They went on a crazy unbeaten streak at Anfield, and it's obviously one of the toughest places to play. Yeah. So, I mean, Origi leaving is honestly, I think, a bit of a sad one. That even as an Arsenal fan, I think it's sad to see an iconic sub kind of go. So, yeah. Do you want to move on to Chelsea?
Yeah, let's move on to Chelsea. Let's see if London
everyone's least favorite top 6 club.
Yeah, them and Man U. Let's see if they're going to be blue this year in London.
Yeah, hopefully not. So obviously Sterling marquee signing so far, 61 million. Koulibaly, another big pickup for them, 41 million. And then obviously the return of some of their loan army, Emerson, Conor Gallagher, Broha, Miazga for the US fans. But yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about Koulibaly, and then we can just talk on maybe what we think Raheem could bring to Chelsea before we go. So have you ever watched Koulibaly play? Do you remember him, anything about him? Obviously great FIFA center back, but don't watch too much of Serie A myself. But what about you?
I really don't know too much about Koulibaly at this point. I think there's some things that I like about. Obviously, he's big, he's strong, but again, is it really the signing that Chelsea needs at this point? And they're kind of, what seems to me, maybe it's not a rebuild, but definitely a transition. Obviously, not only just with the owners, but just seems the players, right? They got rid of Rudiger, they got rid of Christensen, and it just seems to me like they just can't. They have all this young talent, and again, we can go on a tangent about this and maybe a video for Instagram or TikTok. It's just like they have so many young guys that they just can't find a way to get those guys on the field, and for that reason, they leave. They play well at another place, and then Chelsea just decides, oh shoot, maybe we need to re-sign them and get them back, and it ends up not working out. But
yeah,
they're a frustrating bunch.
I think when you think about Koulibaly, I think the kind of mold that you see him in is definitely that kind of athletic freak center back. Like, the dude is tall, he's fast, he's strong, really hard to dribble past. I feel like I think of center backs in kind of two general molds, at least with, playing at 2 at the back. You kind of want one that is, like I kind of talked about with Koulibaly, like big, strong, fast, can win every challenges or keep up with people on the break. And then you'll have one that is a little bit more tactical, really making those important challenges, being in the right position, ball playing, a little bit more technical potentially. And with Rudiger leaving, I think that was, kind of the open door that someone like Koulibaly needed to kind of come into Chelsea. He is 31. He's older. I mean, center backs have a longer life, I think, than positions, but you know, as far as him slotting in, I mean, he's going to be a baller. Like Chelsea's going to have, obviously a strong first team. I think he slots right in. And yeah, I think as far as defense, losing Rudiger and Christensen, those are two obviously, national team starting center backs, for Germany and Denmark. And now they're both off to Real and Barca. And now you bring in potentially one of the best center backs in the world that, might be a little bit older than you like, but also like they still have Thiago Silva, who's, somehow still around. I think he's like 37, 38.
Yeah.
So obviously I think they're willing to take those risks on older players that maybe a team like Arsenal might not be willing to, as along with Liverpool, who maybe prioritize resale value a little bit more. But first team, dude's going to be great. I think he'll be a good signing for them. So, maybe let's talk about Raheem. What do you think Raheem can bring Chelsea?
I think Raheem can actually do a pretty good job for them. I think they're kind of missing that creativity in the front three. I think he'll probably score a lot more goals than both Werner and Lukaku did the past 2 seasons. I think that
Kai Havertz probably.
And Kai Havertz. I mean, like I think that he could actually do a really good job up there. I think he's gonna really benefit from that. I'm curious to see how Pulisic will do, just because I think I know they don't play in the same spots, but I don't know. I just feel
as a winger, it's going to be it'll be interesting to see how it works. I mean, Pulisic's, I think, under 2 years on his contract. Like, I know they just got some American owners at Chelsea, but I mean, you'd think it's time to extend or sell, right? For Pulisic,
at some point. But yeah, I think that with the Raheem Sterling signing up, maybe that overtakes like Christian Pulisic starting, and maybe he gets some minutes taken away from him. But again, I'm excited to see him play, because I think, like I said, I'm a big fan of his. I've been a fan of his since I was since he was a Liverpool youngster. But yeah, I mean, this squad right here, like out of all the squads, maybe besides Man United, leave me like the least excited about out of all of them, because I just think that it seems like they're going at it with the same squad, just minus a couple players that actually are pretty good for them. Like I think that. Rudiger was a great pickup by Real Madrid, and so without him, I'm curious to see how their back line does. And Mendy kind of got exposed a little bit in this against Charlotte FC and then Arsenal too. I mean, this is not looking pretty good, and maybe that's just due to the back line for Chelsea. But
being new, maybe.
I don't know. And then N'Golo Kante's hurt now. I don't know. Actually, no. I think maybe he's not hurt. I think he just couldn't play because he was unvaccinated. I think that was it. But
yeah, I mean, I don't think you're wrong in terms of like excitement around the top 6 squads. I think Chelsea's probably near the bottom there, and I think it's kind of purely because they have these older players. Like you generally know what to expect with Chelsea's players. I mean, Werner and Kai Havertz are probably 2 of their more promising players, and that's it's not exciting in the same sense that when you look at Tottenham, you have Kane and Son. Like those are undoubtedly game-breaking, exciting players. Arsenal's got Saka, Odegaard. 2 very creative, exciting players. I mean, Chelsea feel like a pragmatic team for sure, getting results, getting good players in. A little bit mercenary style. Doesn't matter how old you are, get in here, do a job for Tuchel, and leave when your contract's over.
Yeah.
I mean, getting into the departures, like putting Lukaku on loan after you bought him for 90 to 100 million, whatever it was. Rudiger leaving for Real on a free. Christensen leaving for Barca on a free. These old signings with Danny Drinkwater leaving on a free. That was another one that was kind of head scratching when it first happened. And then Sal Noon, Sal, I'll just say Sal from Atleti on a loan. I don't even know how many games like I even played, but with Chelsea, I feel like they kind of just have a grab bag of players, and you never know which ones could potentially be useful. So they just continue to have a loan army and get a lot of players, and then eventually the cream rises to the crop for them. So I don't think you're wrong though. I think that this is a pragmatic squad, but not necessarily an exciting one.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll have to have our Chelsea friends talk us about why it's exciting. Obviously they have Pulisic. That's exciting for American fans, but as a squad,
it just
not
feels,
not my cup of tea.
yeah, I mean, it just feels like a used car salesman trying to sell you on the hope that, like, hey, this car still runs, even though it has like 150,000 miles left on it. You got 50,000 left to go. Like, again, not saying that a lot of these guys are old, but it comes to the point again when you get rid of guys that are really good. You get back to the youth system with all these guys. Sammy Abraham played really well at Roma. Like he's balling out there. And again, it also comes back to Tuchel, man. Like I think Tuchel deserves to get some fire under him as well because yes, he won the Champions League a couple years back, but at the same time, it feels like his man management skills are not there. And when they're not there, it just you get a lot of upset players, frustrated players, and guys that just don't want to come back and play for you. Again, whether it's Lukaku's fault or whether it was Tuchel's fault, there was obviously a rift there from the beginning. And so that's sad to see because again, I like Romelu. I think that he's a good player, but obviously it didn't work out. And whether it's mostly on Lukaku, whether it's on Thomas Tuchel, if you can't manage some of these top echelon players, especially for the way that, and that was why it was an interesting hiring for me from Abramovich, is that you just need a man manager for the squad. It's not, you don't need a lot of tactical. You can have your assistants be your tactical guys, but for the main guy, he has to be a man manager, be able to handle the personalities and the egos. And I just don't think Tuchel is a guy that does that very well.
No, Tuchel definitely feels like the guy that like runs his system, and you either get along with it or you're shown the door, as seen by Brom. 100 million to loan outside the club the next year. I mean, I think that's been one of the things that you've seen with Tuchel. He was at Dortmund. Was pushed out there, went to PSG, pushed out there, came to Chelsea. It's getting results for sure. I mean, on paper, they have a great squad. Getting results, but just not, I think, the most exciting. And then I guess we'll have to see what further investment looks like for these American ownership groups. So, I mean, I know that they are not willing to bankroll like the Russian oligarch was. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So you want to move on to Spurs?
Spurs, yeah. Let's move on to Spurs. I was trying to think of their.
All right. Spurs. I think they've had probably one of the more interesting windows of teams. Richarlison, 63 million. Basuma, 32 million. And then Spence right back from Middlesbrough for 16 million, as well as Langley,
Perisic,
Fraser Forster, and Yeah, I mean that's a lot. And then the guys that got coming back on loan, and Dale, Lo Celso, Brian Gill. I mean, that is a lot of talent right there. I mean, granted that you're gonna have to figure out how these are gonna fit in with Conte's kind of thoughts. Who honestly, it seems a little bit to me like Tuchel in terms of where he will be controversial with any player.
Yeah.
And I think he definitely prioritizes the system. But I mean, just starting with Richarlison and Basuma, both 25 in their prime, getting them for 63 million and 32 million. Basuma, obviously, potential legal issues, but we'll leave that outside. Richarlison, I think I want to start there. What do you think of Richarlison as a player, and what do you think he'll do at Spurs?
Obviously, he comes off as a immature guy. Obviously, when it comes to Richarlison, you could say a lot of things about him. But what I will say that he does bring that excitement in the upper upper part of the field, the top third of the field. I'm excited for him. I think he'll actually do a pretty good job. I think like you said, the question for them is going to be figuring out how do you get both, Son, Kane, Richarlison, and Mora to play together on the field. Kulusevski. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you're trying to figure out how to like just get space for him. But I mean, when you pay that much for him, it makes me think that he's probably gonna start, or maybe kind of may get eased into starting. There must have been something that either Conte or the management liked from him. So, and when you play with Harry Kane, it just makes it a lot easier. Again, it's crazy to think that Harry Kane's only 28. I thought he was a lot older than that. I thought he was like 30-something, like 31, 32. Obviously could have made a move the last 2 seasons to Man City or a different squad. But, to be able to retain him, bring Richarlison there to kind of learn under him, I think that this is an exciting time to be a Spurs fan, man. I think that, to me, this is the team that won the transfer window in the summer. Like, the amount of signings that they got in, again, I think Basuma, from what I've seen, is that he's been cleared of the charges. And so, with that being said, getting him for that price, when he was expected to go for double that, I think that's a great pickup. And again, they took the risk. They must have had some insider information at the police station to maybe say like, nah, he won't be charged if he signs with Spurs. But again, being able to get him, whatever the legal issues may be, great pickup for them. And like you said, Spence, another great pickup, and even the guys that they got on a free transfer and a loan transfer. I mean, what more could you ask for, right? I think Spurs obviously won the window. The question becomes, is this going to be sustainable for more than just 2 years? Because that's the biggest thing for Spurs going forward, is that, you'll be good in the first 2 years. And obviously, Arsenal have taken a different approach. They've gone the young people route. But I am excited to see what Conte is able to do with them. And again, Conte's not a guy that stays at a club for very long. He's got a short temper. He can get very frustrated very easily. And if it doesn't work out the way that he wants to, he'll just end up leaving. And so I think for a 2-year window, I think Spurs have a pretty solid team. And I think, like I said, they definitely won the window this offseason.
So I'm not going to go that far, but I definitely think they've had a good window. Unfortunately for me, we already gone over the big names that are coming. And coming back from loan. So, I mean, I'll talk about Richarlison and Basuma and Spence. I mean, 3 players that were all concretely linked with Arsenal. So it's very interesting to see these kind of transfer battles happen and, where people kind of end up. So, there were times I was thinking about Basuma and Richarlison, in an Arsenal jersey, and I liked it. So obviously now they're at Spurs, I hate it. But they are good players. Richarlison, I think, has been a little kind of dragged down by Everton's overall quality, but I think he's generally a good player. He's got a lot of talent in him. Basuma, I can't pretend that I have watched him too closely with Brighton, but I know he's a pretty good center mid, and center mids, especially center defensive mids, have seemed to be in pretty short supply. Seen on the price tags on most of them, like the defensive mid that went to Real from Monaco. I think he went for like 100 mil to Chumi. Yeah. And then Calvin Phillips to City for like 60 mil. Like, defensive mids are I think one of the more underrated, expensive positions to buy, and him for 30 mils, pretty good deal. Spence was another one that actually was also linked to Arsenal. He played against us in one of our cup games. I think the game, can't remember exactly which game, but he was definitely one of those, like, see him in your game and be like, oh wow, this guy's good, and then we're linked to him with a transfer later. Obviously ended up at Spurs, but seems solid. So that plus Perisic, Langley, returns of Ndombele, Lo Celso, Brian Gill, like, man, that's a lot of reinforcements for Spurs. I don't know if they have another move in the bucket, but I mean, like you said, seems to be a pretty good window. And then really with departures, all they have is Bergwijn back to Ajax for 35 mil. Honestly, seems like a pretty good sell. 35 million for a winger that, only played part-time, has kind of outshone
Mm-hmm.
like Kulusevski. Yeah, that seems like a pretty good deal. And then it looks like Cameron Carter-Vickers, who I didn't even know was on Spurs,
Yep.
24-year-old center back for the U.S., going to
Mm-hmm.
Celtic for 7.7. So, yeah, not too many departures, lots of arrivals. I mean, we'll see. We'll see where this ends up. So,
Rebuilding for the
um,
next 2 years.
yeah, I mean, Conte's joke, I think, is that in the third year, he's usually like implodes and gets fired or leaves. So I think we'll hopefully see it all or nothing, maybe on Spurs, but we'll see. All right. Any final thoughts on that before we move on?
Nope. I think just be on the lookout this year for them. I think that this is going to be a squad like you said that they're hungry, and I think that the rivalry between the Arsenal, that being and Spurs is going to be actually a really good one this time, where I think it
Yeah.
actually will be very competitive. I think both games will be to the wire. I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be an interesting top four race for sure. So, all right, getting to the end of our top six with Arsenal and Man U. Let's go into Arsenal, obviously. Yeah, I mean, what do you think overall? We got, as far as incomings that we've bought, Jesus Zinchenko, we've mentioned Fabio Vieira, an interesting, intriguing one. Matt Turner, obviously exciting U.S. goalkeeper, in the mix for the number one spot, and then we also have a Brazilian, Marquinhos, that
Marquinhos,
we
yeah.
yeah that we also bought. So, what do you think so far?
For me, I like the Jesus signing. Obviously, he's shown the preseason that he's scoring goals left and right, so that's a good sign for Arsenal fans. Especially if we look back to the table last season, which I'll pull up here for you guys. You can see the goal difference of
Ugh,
13. That's
gross.
definitely something what Arsenal needs, and so to me, that was a top priority for them. And again, I think you said Vieira. I liked him. I saw his highlights. Obviously, highlights don't tell the whole story, but I'm excited to see how he's going to be playing. I don't think he's played yet for you guys. If that's
Nah,
correct,
he's been hurt.
he's been hurt,
Yeah,
and
he's
that's
coming back from injury, but I think he'll be okay by by
and that
uh next week.
and that's my only concern about him so far. It's just been the injuries, more so the fact that we haven't seen him play. So again, maybe that'll get eased up. I think obviously, like I talked about before, my Man City signing. I think the Zinchenko one is my favorite one for you guys. I think he just adds that versatile player that Arsenal kind of need in case they get stuck in a pivot, especially when it comes to Tierney and his injuries and Partey with whatever he's going on with him. So I think by having him there, I like that signing, man. I think it's going to be an exciting one. And again, Marquinhos, one for the future. Could be a similar situation to Martinelli, even, where maybe he's
Yeah,
just kind of maybe
hopefully, man.
you're just like maybe we'll send him out, but at the end he plays for you and he actually plays really well, and so he's as a rotational guy. So again, I think that for you guys, you did a really good job this offseason of acquiring the last bit of pieces that you need in order for the process, the European process in England, compared to the Philadelphia 76ers process. You just want to make sure it doesn't end up like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like your team. I mean, what do you say, PM? This is your team. This is your squad. What do you make about your off season so far?
I mean, I think you got to be excited. I mean, it's been a great offseason. I mean, we've been aggressive in the window,
Mm-hmm.
getting targets early. That is not something that has been happening at Arsenal, over the last 5 years. I mean, we have always left business late, and it's constantly shot us in the foot.
Yeah.
So, seeing the way Edu and Arsenal have brought people in and with
Mm-hmm.
intense, it hasn't even really been too out of the blue outside of Vieira. Vieira really came out of nowhere, but I mean, Jesus Zinchenko, those two were kind of like, oh yeah, we're interested. Boom, talks with City, done, and into the team. So, I mean, Jesus is, I think, probably the biggest signing, for us so far, and probably the whole window. But he can make or break, I think, our entire season with his
Mm-hmm.
goal contributions this game, or not this game, this season. Excuse me. Because because he's come in to replace Aubameyang and Lacazette. And what I've seen so far from Jesus is that he is the striker that we should have bought in like January, and he probably would have led us to Champions League. Obviously, we were chasing Dusan Vlahovic, ended up going to Juve, great player. City probably wouldn't have let Jesus go at that point, but I mean, 25 in his prime, fast. You know, I obviously watched him at City, but like just watching him in preseason at Arsenal, I've been very impressed with his dribbling, his pace. I mean, his finishing. I thought that was maybe one of the question marks. You know, seemed like he was quick, agile, and fast. But you know, as far as finishing, he has shown that he's an incredible finisher. He had that scoop over Mendy in the preseason game, scored like incredibly tight angle goal for his first goal for Arsenal in a friendly in Germany, I believe. Germany. Very great finish. He scored, I think, every game or close to every game that he's been in the preseason and hasn't really looked back. So, I mean, as far as a forward that we were going to sign, I don't know if we valued everyone and he was first, but in terms of availability, he was there, reasonable price. You know, smack in his prime. I don't know if you can really expect much more as a signing. I mean, we're trying to go for top 4. We want to be competing for Champions League. We want to win Europa League. We need players of real quality to come in and elevate us to that next level. And I think Jesus, Zinchenko, those are 2 first-team quality players. I mean, they were first teamers for City. Maybe they weren't starting every game, but they are definitely going to elevate, I think, the overall talent, and that's what we need is depth and talent. And I think that's what they do. Zinchenko is going to cover Tierney, as well as potentially center mid, which we also need. So I don't think that could go much better in terms of cover. And then Vieira, I don't know too much, like you said, outside of some highlight videos, but I mean, he seems like an exciting young talent. I know that from Twitter, some Porto fans were not happy for the $38.5 million we bought him. He's 22, got some Champions League experience. And yeah, I mean, he's interesting. His interview, I think I've said that he can play as a 8, a 10, play on the wings, but he said his preferred position is a 10, which, you know, we have Odegaard. So I think he could be competing with Odegaard and, you know, rotating with him, but you know, we'll see. Like you said, we haven't seen him in preseason yet. We'll see what he's about, but I mean, he's definitely going to play a decent role, I think, in everything. And then, I mean, Matt Turner coming is exciting. He wasn't even drafted out of the MLS draft, which is honestly crazy because if you think about any U.S. goalie going to a Premier League team, you would think not making the MLS draft is probably the end of your hopes as a Premier League player. But hey, Matt Turner, I mean, he goes and went to the Richmond Kickers where our friend Jalen Chrysler plays right now. So hopefully a sign of things potentially for Jalen. But went to the Richmond Kickers and then ended up getting into the MLS. I forget what team. I think the Revolution. The Revolution. And yeah, that signing kind of came out of nowhere as well. But I think we're going to let Leno go. So exciting to see another U.S. keeper in the Prem. And then, you know, not necessarily, a transfer addition, but William Saliba looks incredible as a center back. I mean, kept a clean sheet versus Chelsea. And I watched the highlights of that game, and it didn't seem we conceded too many chances. And the dude was going toe-to-toe with Chelsea's starting attackers. I mean, I look at Saliba, and I'm kind of like, guy looks like a young Van Dijk, right? He's strong. He's fast. I mean, doesn't get dribbled past. Like, I mean, am I overhyping him, or did he? You know, does he look good?
He looks good, and I talked about this in the chat in our personal chat with me, you, and you know, obviously our friends. You know, that's why I was so frustrated with Arsenal these last couple of years, because you know, this is a really good player that you have. Like, you know, obviously, I've seen, you know, kind of the highlights, obviously some other videos as well, but you look at a guy like Saliba, like this guy shows you why he should be clearly a number one for your team. Now, the question for me, and that's the reason why I was a little bit hesitant on you guys getting a guy like Ben White, because you also have the Gabriel Magalhaes as well on your team. Like I think he's another guy that you could start unless he decides he needs to go. Like maybe Juve.
I think
Juve's been sniffing around.
Yeah.
Juve's been sniffing around for him. But I think that he has to start for you guys this coming season. I don't think there's no ifs, ands, or buts for him. Like, and if he doesn't start, that's when he'll probably want to leave. And so that's my biggest concern for you guys right now is that I think he needs to start. But now that you've made that big purchase signing of Ben White, what does that do for him? Does he not start? Does he come off the bench? And so that's kind of a concern of mine when it comes for you guys defensively. Is the Saliba signing, or not signing, but the returning of Saliba to Arteta's plans after being sent out on loan to Marseille.
I mean, I think that's why the contract talks are kind of testy. I think we have 2 years left on his deal. Arsenal's biggest transfer policy has been, anything within 2 years of a contract. Usually you're looking at a keep or sell decision at that point, and undoubtedly we don't want to let him go. I mean, he's 21. He just won Young Player of the Year, I think, for France, for the French league.
Mm-hmm. Uber Eats league.
Uber Eats, crazy. But I mean, he looks incredible. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a guy play in preseason where I'm like, that guy is 1,000% first team guy, like coming off of a loan. Like the guy looks ready. I think Ben White's versatility helps us there because I think Saliba will play right center back, Gabriel will play left center back, and then White can fill in at right back or defensive mid. So maybe I think we see a little bit more versatility out of Ben White. Last year, obviously, we didn't have too much depth at center back. You saw that when we obviously lost the North London derby. Rob Holding was starting for Ben White as he was hurt, and then gets sent off somewhat instantly and kind of ends our chances of clinching top four that day. But I mean, Saliba looks. I think you're spot on. He's got to start. I don't think there's a world that he's not starting a lot of minutes for Arsenal, and it's exciting. I don't think for an Arsenal fan, we don't have a lot of depth in terms of center back ever. I mean, we were using a pretty old Lauren Koscielny for a while for the last 5 years before he finally got fed up and left. He was like 33 or 34, and he was still playing like every game. I mean, Liverpool, you guys are blessed with so many great center backs. You guys buy really great center backs, and I mean, even guys like Matip, where you didn't think that they were going to be that important. Like the dude was starting for you guys for some of your biggest games, like with him and Van Dijk, Joe Gomez. Who's the French center back you got from Konate? Like those. I mean, you guys have 4 starting quality center backs, and I think that's what Arsenal are trying to do. I think that's why Saliba was sent on loan, because we were trying to develop him because we just couldn't start him. 20 years old, it's pretty young. So I mean, that's exciting. We've got an exciting addition, I think, in every area of the pitch. I think we might have one more signing in us. Maybe depends on some outgoings at this point, but as far as outgoings lately, we have not been great. Lacazette has gone on a free. Guendouzi, I think we had agreed a fee last year for 12 million. Mavropanos, who is a rotational center back, for $3.5 million. Not the greatest at selling still, but we've turned over a lot of our team. We got rid of Oba in January. I think most of the people at Arsenal have bought into Arteta's philosophy, and we'll see on All or Nothing. Hopefully we'll get some good content out of All or Nothing, and we'll share it on the 4 a.m. football channels. And we'll see. I think it's an exciting time as an Arsenal fan. We're young, got a lot of talent. I don't think we're quite at Liverpool or City yet, but we're trending there, up.
What the 2 questions about the Arsenal squad? So
Yeah.
Obviously, you also added another key signing, more so a change in number. You have Eddie Nketiah coming in with the number 14,
Yep.
Henri. Like,
Yep.
do you expect him to kind of be an answer for you guys as a striking option? Because I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you're wearing the big boy Henri's number. There was contract negotiations where you were thinking, is he staying? Is he going?
Yep.
Uh, what happens with him? Like, what do you expect from this guy?
Yeah. So with Enkedia, it's funny, right? Because Oba left in January, and it was really Lacazette playing exclusively at striker for, say, the 3/4 of the rest of the
Yeah,
season. And Kedia gets a run in, and starts scoring like instantly. I think he scored like 5 or 6 goals over the last 9 or 10 games.
yeah,
Whatever it is, he scored some important goals. Scored versus Chelsea multiple times, I think. Um, and I was pretty skeptical, I think, of Eddie. Um, I thought if he wasn't going to be pushing on Aubameyang and Lacazette, who are kind of reaching the end of their primes, I was like, I don't know if there really is a future for him if you can't really try to make your mark with older players that are underperforming there. But maybe it was also Arteta not trusting him. But as soon as Eddie got in, he did his job and he scored. So I think it was nice to keep him. He's from Chelsea's academy that we signed him originally,
Mhm.
and he's still pretty young. Obviously anyone wearing Henri's number, it's big weight on your jersey. But
Yeah.
I mean, what I've seen in preseason, the guy has looked pretty clinical. He's looked like he's dangerous. He looks like he combines with Jesus, so I'm wondering if we maybe do a little bit more two striker formations, or maybe Jesus kind of like on one of the wings with Eddie at striker. It gives us a lot of versatility, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely see. But I think I'm lukewarm on Eddie. I
Lukewarm.
don't think I'm like
You're not dipping
not on
your
the hype,
You're not jumping in the pool.
dipping my toes in. I'm not on the hype train, but the hype train is at the station. It
Okay.
used to be completely gone.
Yeah.
Eddie's gone.
Hmm.
It wasn't even a possibility. But the hype train is definitely in the station. We'll see how he gets on with Jesus, but they certainly look like a good pairing. And then you said you had one question. I think
The
one more
last
before
one.
we go. Man, yeah.
This is, of course, I talk about this guy numerous amount of times. Again, it's fun to kind of
Oh,
bring
I
it up on video. More so, let's talk about Granit Xhaka, Dormevu, right? So this guy obviously has had his history with the club. A lot of ups and downs, a lot of turmoil, a lot of good moments, bad moments. Granit Xhaka, is it time to let him go? Is it time to sell him, move on, get the money that you can from him? Because I think that he's the one player. If he, because I think Arteta really likes the guy, just like Edu likes the boy.
Yep. I
Like,
think so. Yeah, I
like
think so.
it. I just in my mind, I think he's the one player that could hold Arsenal back from really propelling to where I think they want to go, which is obviously the Champions League, which is trying to contend at some point in their future for the Premier League title once Man City and Liverpool kind of die down and they have to start retooling again more majorly this time. I think he's the one guy that holds you guys back. And again,
Yeah.
he is a great player. I know our friend loves the guy. I know, and again, this is no shot at him, but I really do think that he is the guy that holds Arsenal back from where I think that they
Yeah.
can be. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about Granit Xhaka?
So obviously a polarizing figure at Arsenal. Don't think I've seen too many other captains throw the armband down, get booed by fans, and have a row at fans. And then also come back and be an important player for us. I mean, we definitely don't get close to top four without Xhaka last season. He put Man United away with a great strike. The thing with him is that I think most days he elevates the level. I'd say most days he can be in a squad of a Champions League contending team. There are moments that have been too frequent, I think, that have shown that he is not someone you want to always rely on. He is talented. But if I say, hey, you'll have a talented midfielder for Liverpool, but they're slow. They're not physically really at the level of most midfielders, and they tend to make errors that can, kind of give the match to other players or to other teams. And I think you would say you don't want them. Like, what you want is consistency. You don't want somebody that comes in and does it, 7, 8 out of 10 most games, then drops 1 out of 10 red card or giveaway in front of goal, or, just has these kind of blow up performances that just completely, kind of ruin your chance at winning. So with Xhaka, I don't know if we'll get rid of him this season, just because I think we need center mids. If we sign a center mid, I don't know what'll happen, because we obviously have Partey's future a little bit up in there. I just think with that, you can't really let Xhaka go. So I think he's kind of full steam ahead. And, maybe Xhaka is seen by Arteta as like one of his projects, because he convinced him to stay. He wanted to go to Roma. I mean, Arteta wasn't a very mobile center mid either, and maybe he sees a little bit of himself in Xhaka, and maybe sees him as kind of a pet project. So, I mean, if it's not this year, I'd say next year. I think he's got 3 years left on his deal. Next year will be the 2-year mark, and I think it makes sense for him to part. But yeah, Xhaka looks like he's definitely running it back, trying to make the Champions League with Arsenal. So, for me, I would take, 10 to 15, 20 mil, whatever you could get for him. I think you could maybe, use that money a little bit more productively, but I understand why they might keep him. So yeah. So let's talk about Man U. Obviously the last of the top 6 by a good margin. Obviously, I think the least desirable team in the top 6 for anyone considering a transfer. But let's go over some of their signings. I mean, Lisandro Martinez, obviously another Arsenal target. They signed him for 63 million. A left back, Tyrell Malacia, hadn't heard of him before, 16.5 mil. Christian Eriksen, obviously a great story. Love seeing him back in the Premier League on a free. And then really the only one of note in terms of returning loanees, I think to me, would be Martial from Sevilla. So, I mean, what do you think so far? I mean, it seems like they still got work to do if they've got, a center back and a left back. Because, I mean, I think they got to get somebody in at center mid. I mean, Pogba's gone. Matic is gone. I mean, Matic was 33 holding down their center mid. Pogba, obviously a huge blow on a free. I mean, there's work to be done for Man U, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of work to be done. Obviously, the Cristiano Ronaldo rumors of him not coming, and now he's there at training camp, I think also kind of put trying to think of the right word, but it really gets a lot of the fans, especially
like a cloud,
but also, the fans of other teams kind of just making fun of them because obviously they're in a state of turmoil. I think for me, when it comes to this Man United team, they really need to figure out a transfer policy that works for them. That's not just let's sign the guy with the most notoriety and try to just bring him on the team and see what we can do with him, because it continues to be a situation where these guys, they bring them in, they think that they're doing something there, but then it ends up petering out for the most part. Happened with Sancho this year. I don't think Sancho is a bad player, but I do think that he can do a job next season. It's just, what service do you have around him, right? You got, like you said, you got rid of Pogba. You got rid of Lingard. Sad signing for him to go. you got Matic out. Again, this team, they need to obviously do a lot of reconstruction, right? Frankie de Jong is another signing that they personally want on their squad. I think it actually would make them a lot better of a squad. And this is Ten Hag's rebuild project. It's similar to where Arteta was years back. when he was rebuilding Arsenal in that sense, where you had a bunch of guys like Willian, you had David Luiz, guys that were just consistently
You're
just
giving me PTSD
Yeah, I know.
flashbacks.
I
Be
was gonna
careful.
say,
I need a trigger warning.
trigger warning for those guys. But like those were the people that really frustrated Arsenal fans, and it's the same thing that's happening for Man United fans. Obviously, you can blame the Glazers and blame the ownership group, but at the end of the day, they need to figure out a transfer policy that says, "Hey, we're looking for this type of player. Let's look for this type of player." And then once they do that, one day they will probably get back to the old Man United that really frustrated a lot of fans back in the '90s and maybe early 2000s. But until then, it's like you said, it's a lot of work to be done. They have brought in some okay signings. Obviously nothing that's going to break the, going to be super, people hyped up about it. You have Fernandez as well. After a poor season, what's he going to do for this coming season? Again, Ronaldo trying to leave, but ends up staying because no one wants him. Obviously, you have the Greenwood situation. We don't know what's going to happen there in terms of will they release him? Will they keep him? Obviously, you have Jadon Sancho trying to come back stronger than ever after a pretty disappointing season. And again, I think that Ten Hag has something with this squad in terms of some pieces here and there, but like this is going to be like a 5 to 6 year project. This isn't going to be one where you're looking to see Man United back, fighting for the number one spot this coming year. This is definitely going to be a 5 to 6 year project, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, 5 years is a long time. I think 3 to 5 years could be a decent timeline, but it definitely feels like they're at least a few years away. I think from kind of putting fear into the other teams. I mean, what's been exciting, I think, as a Man U fan, is that they have tried to address some of the areas they've had problems. So, center back, obviously one. Lisandro Martinez, the exciting center back prospect. And then rumors of Frankie de Jong. I mean, I think it's been pretty clear that defensive center mid has been one of the biggest issues for Manchester United year after year, and they just never addressed it. And then they just let obviously Pogba go, who's not even a defensive mid, but Matic, I guess, was their defensive mid, and he's still, even with De Jong, you would feel like they need to bring at least one more, for competition. But I mean, De Jong, I think, would be a pretty good signing, all things considered. I don't know if he wants to go, which is honestly kind of funny. I think that's a little bit of a symbolic of Manchester United at the moment. I don't think they have the pull that some of the other top 6 teams have. So I think De Jong is at least a step in the right direction in terms of their targets. Definitely feels by the end of the window, we'll see at least a few more signings than for Man U. Feels like they have a little bit of an incomplete window at this point, but Eriksen should be a good signing.
He's a temporary signing, just as like a stopgap.
I think he did well for Brentford in his short time there, and it's obviously a great story coming in with his kind of recovery from the Euros and his collapse there. Thankfully, everything is okay and he can play. But as far as Man U, it's like can they put it all together? And I think Ten Hag is probably the right type of manager for this kind of rebuilding project. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't have too much more on Man U. Do you?
No, other than let's see what happens with Cristiano Ronaldo. I think that and Martial too. I think there's the Martial one to me is an interesting one just because of the fact that this guy has continuously balled out in many places other than Man United, and there's continues to be articles, continues to be focus on him as like the can't miss guy. Let's see if this is this is the year that Martial finally puts it all together in the Premier League, and like time and time again, you're going to get left disappointed. And so I'm curious to see how they, that being the Man United, seeing if they decide to keep him or try to sell him. Because I just think that for me, I just don't see it with Martial. I think it's time to just move on from him and collect the money that you can from him and see if you can't move him to somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. I think before we go to the ending with the U.S. National teams, let's just touch on a couple more exciting points for American Premier League fans, which gotta mention Leeds in that conversation. Jesse Marsch was hired last season to take over Marco Bielsa's squad and guided them to safety, which was honestly a tough job. They were fighting for that. And 38 points they ended with, and Burnley got relegated with 35. So came down to very fine margins. But Jesse Marsch did it. He's got some instant reinforcements in Brendan Aronson, obviously a U.S. national team member, and Tyler Adams also coming in as well, Arsenal target. So I mean, I think if you're like a new U.S. soccer Premier League fan, I mean, Leeds could be one of the ways you go. I think they've got some exciting players. They sold Rafinha. They're going to have a little bit more ammo to go into this window. They sold Calvin Phillips and Rafinha, I think, for close to 100 million.
Yep.
They have some ammo. They got 2 U.S. men's national team players on there. Patrick Bamford is an intriguing striker. Yeah, I mean, that's really exciting for American soccer fans. We see a manager, previously the only other American manager was, I believe, Bob Bradley for Swansea for like 12 or 13 games, and then obviously Ted Lasso in the fictional world of that Premier League. So I mean, Leeds is exciting for US fans. And then we'll also touch on Nottingham Forest, promoted to the Premier League from the Championship, and they are actually led by an American CEO. So that's also very exciting. He joined them in the Championship, led them to the Premier League. Hopefully, both Leeds and Nottingham Forest can have good seasons, and we can kind of continue to see that American influence grow in the Premier League. So yeah, maybe we touch on a little bit of the U.S. teams. As far as the U.S. men, obviously they've qualified for the World Cup with a loss to Costa Rica, I believe. Yeah, 2-0. We lost to Costa Rica, but we did not lose 5-0, and that was important because that would have knocked us out into the playoffs for the World Cup. But I mean, I see on the website right now they're ranked 14th in the world. I mean, that seems a little high, considering that we didn't make the World Cup 4 years ago. But I mean, we're counting down to the World Cup. We're 118 days away. We'll obviously be covering the lead up and build up into that. But just since we've qualified, we beat Morocco 3-0, tied Uruguay 0-0, beat Grenada. Not Grenada. That's not a country. Oh, it is. Grenada is a country. So we did beat Grenada 5-0, and then tied El Salvador 1-1. So kind of a mixed bag of results. Big wins over, I think, opponents we should, and then a couple of draws. Uruguay is usually a pretty solid team. They usually make the World Cup. El Salvador, I don't think, is a team we want to be tying, but I think I remember Jordan Morris scoring a late tying goal for them. So, leading up to the World Cup, we have 2 more friendlies. I see versus Japan in September 23rd, and then Saudi Arabia.
I think this is
KSA.
Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I think could be interesting. Very, political tensions there. So 2 more friendlies before the World Cup. I mean, do you have any players that I guess you're excited for to see play in the World Cup? Obviously, we missed it last time. Got a new crop of players, but who are you excited to watch for the U.S. men's national team?
I'm excited to see Jordan Morris, obviously coaching out of school right now, but I'm excited to see what he can do. Excited
if he makes the squad. I think he's on the cusp. I think it's close.
Yeah, so if he can make it, that'd be great. Obviously, Christian Pulisic, another guy I'd be nice to get the stigma off his back in terms of a guy that can't necessarily get over the hump of like the media, people making fun of him and things like that. So if he can have
I think
if he
with
can have a
him,
good,
I think it's just the consistency. Like his
yeah,
talent is obviously there. You remember that game versus Liverpool? He came on,
yeah,
scored like 2 or 3 goals like instantly.
yeah,
The talent's always been there for him, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, did you see his quote? I think a week or so ago, he said, "All right, we're going to the World Cup with the intention of winning it," which is obviously kind of a nothing statement, but I mean,
hmm
it certainly says that like he feels confident
yeah,
in our ability to compete, which I at least like the confidence.
hmm yeah, and
I
I
mean,
think there's going to be an exciting time for U.S. soccer. Obviously, there you have a tough group. Not saying it's the group of death, but it is a tough group for them, and so I think they have it, man. I think if they can continue to play the way that they have been, kind of leading up to their qualifications of actually qualifying for the World Cup, then I have no doubt in my mind they can at least get to the round of 16 with no problem.
yeah, I think round of 16 is where you at least would like to see them, because anything can happen once you get there. But I mean, with the crop of players that are featuring for some of the biggest teams in Europe, Pulisic obviously at Chelsea, Tyler Adams at Leeds, Aronson at Leeds, Gio Reyna, exciting prospects from
Mm-hmm.
Dortmund. Going through the same route that Pulisic went through. Weston McKennie at Juventus, played really well and scored a bunch of goals for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony Robinson at Fulham, leading them back to the Premier League. Serginho Dest at Barca, though they might be trying to sell him. And Josh Sargent with Nottingham Forest, not Nottingham Forest, with
Norwich.
Norwich, who got relegated, but he scored an absolute banger of a scorpion for them. I mean, it certainly seems that we're trending in the right direction. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited. We'll definitely have a lot more World Cup lead up videos
Mm-hmm.
and analysis kind of leading up. But anything else before we move on?
No, I think it's an exciting time to be a USA fan, and again, I have my only concern is with Berhalter. I'm not a huge believer in him, um,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
obviously it's up to the players and how they play. And so again, if they can play to the potential that a lot of people say that they can, and they have the belief within themselves, I think it'll be a fun time. But again, I'm not really too, and again, that's my only criticism of the USA Soccer so far has been with Berhalter, because again, he's more, to me, he seems more like a hype beast with all this shoes that he's trying to show off to the young guys. Probably getting them from your brother. Getting it
The
from
Nori plug,
yeah, getting Pinoy. Maybe we'll have to get a Pinoy logo somewhere here just to sell some
Yeah,
shoes. Get a residual back for selling shoes
yeah.
per video. But yeah, that's my only concern with USA Soccer.
I think that's a very valid concern. Berhalter got the job, of which his brother, I believe, was part of the committee that hired him. So a little bit of nepotism,
Yeah,
potentially. But as far as results, you got to say the biggest goal for him was winning the qualification into the World Cup. He
yeah,
did that, even though it was maybe a little bit dicier than we wanted. Ended with a 2-0 loss to Costa Rica.
mm-hmm.
We did win the Nations League over Mexico in a pretty crazy final. We won the Gold Cup. He's generally done what's been expected. Has it been better than expected? Maybe not, but it's been about in line with expectations. So, if he didn't make the World Cup, that was obviously going to be
Yeah,
his bell on getting fired. But, we'll see. I think this World Cup will be very interesting to see how the U.S. perform, and Berhalter is definitely one of those parts. So,
yeah,
all right. I think before we end, we got to touch on the U.S. women.
mm-hmm.
So, obviously, the number one ranked team in all of women national teams. So far this year, 11 wins, 0 losses, 1 draw, and 46 goals scored in 12 games.
Yeah.
Just came off a fresh CONCACAF W championship, of which they not only qualified for the World Cup next year, but also the Olympics in Paris in 2 years, I believe.
Mhm.
So huge for them, winning this championship and exercising some demons versus Canada, who knocked them out of the Olympics in the semifinal round. So very sweet for them getting that revenge, and good to see them kind of bounce back. But did you catch any of those CONCACAF W Championship games? I know it's an interesting concept for some of the fans of the male side of things, because it is not a tournament that is held for the men. So the men actually break things up in terms of qualifying for the Olympics and World Cup.
Yeah.
In terms of qualifying for the World Cup, obviously we have the Hex. The women, they have basically this small tournament, CONCACAF W Championship, of which the highest rated teams, and I believe there's some qualifiers for it. But if you win 2 games, you get into the World Cup. If you win it outright, then you get to book your flight to Paris for the Olympics, and then the semifinal, or sorry, not the semifinal, the third place winner faces the second place team to get into the Olympics, and so that'll be Canada versus Costa Rica. I think Costa Rica. But yeah, I mean, did you catch any of these games?
I think the only one that I caught was the U.S. versus Canada. That was the last. I think that was the last game that they played. Actually, that was the one I caught.
Yeah.
Again, I think when it comes to superiority, obviously women's soccer in the U.S. has that superiority in terms of just being able to just dominate the competition. As you can tell by the win-loss record and draw, you can clearly see that these women obviously take it a lot more seriously than the men do at times. And so it's a little funny to see that in terms of like the women are just like cruising by the competition. Meanwhile, the men have to kind of scrape by to win their stuff. So I'm excited to see how they perform next year in the World Cup. Again, this is going to be a new crop of players. Obviously, with the likes of Rapinoe leaving at some point, and then you have Alex Morgan as well.
Carly Lloyd retired.
The players that we were so accustomed to seeing in the last World Cup, the new set of players, the next generation's coming up, and I'm curious to see if they can continue that domination going into the next couple of years, or will another squad from Europe? Obviously the women's Euros is on right now, so it's fun to watch that. Watching the back heel from the English ladies, watching the back heel go in for them. And so I'm curious to see if one of those teams in Europe, or anywhere else, doesn't have to be from Europe, but can anybody stop the American dominance in women's soccer? And I know that's like a negative connotation to kind of go at, but they've been so dominant that it's crazy to think that they've kind of had similar runs to what we see here in the States with the Patriots and the Spurs at points, and even the Golden State Warriors to an extent. Like just that the ability to just dominate their competition for so long. So I'm curious to see.
Yeah, they're a dynasty for sure. I mean, they're back-to-back World Cup champions. They'll be defending 2-time champs in the next World Cup. Could you imagine if the U.S. men were ever back-to-back World Cup champs coming into their third World Cup? Like, I think people's heads might explode if we even make it into the semifinals. Like, with the women, they're so dominant. They've won back-to-back World Cups. It's a bigger story when the U.S. women lose than when they win, which I think is the biggest compliment that you can give them, because it was surprising when they lost that semifinal match to Canada. That was the first time they'd lost to Canada in 20 years. 20 years. So, yeah, I mean, they're an incredible team, one of the most dominant, soccer entities I think that you could really think of in modern football. And, I mean, as far as young talent, Sophia Smith showed out at this tournament. She scored some great goals. I was very impressed with what I kind of seen. I've watched all the highlights and watched most of the games, but Trinity Rodman is another one to be excited for as a young emerging women's player as well. Her dad is obviously Dennis Rodman. Was reading that they didn't always have a great relationship, but she's obviously succeeded in spite of that, and she looks like a promising attacker. So, I mean, not much else can get better if you're a U.S. women's soccer fan. So that is obviously exciting
for sure.
So, I mean, I think that wraps up everything that we wanted to talk about. So, unless you have any parting notes, I think we can end it there.
Nope, I think we can call it good. Again, thank you everybody for tuning in to this episode. Obviously, it's the kind of just prediction stuff. We talked about the men's Premier League stuff, so we appreciate you guys tuning in. Just remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, we're trying to grow this up. Trying to get, again, a community like my friend PM said, just a place where a community where we can talk about soccer, whether we have opinions that are similar or whether opinions that are different. And I'm sure we'll have difference of opinions, especially when we bring personalities on. But again, appreciate you guys tuning in today.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. See you guys soon.
See ya.